Have you ever heard of something called the Q Bible? Well, let me tell you about one of the most fascinating and sometimes controversial topics in biblical scholarship that sparked countless debates among researchers and theologians. First, let's clear up a common misconception. The Q Bible isn't actually a physical book you can pick up and read. In fact, it's more like a biblical detective story. The letter Q comes from the German word Quell, which simply means source. Think of it as a missing puzzle piece that scholars believe helps explain how the Gospels were written. Here's where it gets really interesting. Biblical scholars notice something intriguing. The Gospels of Matthew and Luke share a lot of similar content that isn't found in Mark's Gospel. We're talking about specific sayings of Jesus that appear almost word for word in both books. This led to what's called the two-source hypothesis. The idea that Matthew and Luke both used Mark's Gospel as a foundation, but also drew from this mysterious second source, Q. So what's in this hypothetical Q source? It's primarily a collection of Jesus' teachings and sayings, known as logia. Imagine it as a sort of ancient collection of Jesus' greatest hits, his most important messages and wisdom, carefully preserved by early Christian communities. But here's the million-dollar question. Should you be concerned about Q if you're already reading the Bible? Not really. Remember, if Q existed, its contents are already preserved within the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. It's not about adding to or changing scripture. It's about understanding how these sacred texts came to be. This brings us to an important point about biblical authenticity. The Q theory doesn't challenge the truth of scripture. Instead, it helps us understand how the early Christian community preserved and passed down Jesus' teachings. It's like discovering the behind-the-scenes story of how the Gospels were crafted. Think of it this way. If you're enjoying a beautiful piece of music, knowing how the composer created it doesn't make the music any less beautiful. Similarly, understanding how the Gospels might have been composed doesn't diminish their message. If anything, it shows us how carefully early Christians worked to preserve Jesus' teachings for future generations.